All right, grab your favorite mug. It's time for Coffee with Your Retirement Coach.
Welcome back to Coffee with Your Retirement Coach. It's a holiday episode.
You'd never know.
You never know. Listen,
What's the holiday?
I think
Be an independent thinker and tell me what it is.
Independence Day, and we hope that you guys are going to celebrate whatever you do, if it's with the barbecue, with the family, with friends. We hope you have a fantastic time celebrating some time off in this incredible country.
And Aaron, just, because our audience is kind of mixed, we've got listeners on the podcast. However, if you're a listener on the podcast today,
that's a good point.
this might be the one episode you want to tune in and watch, if nothing else, to capture the wonderful
It's a great shirt,
Attire.
Nick.
If you're
into the Braves,
your retirement coaches, especially one Mr. Aaron Calhoun, might be wearing today.
Very
so
patriotic,
I would
buddy.
encourage you, even if you're a listener, today is the episode you want to tune in and catch the podcast or the video.
well, the studio is already set. I've got my patriotic mug. I think we're all pretty patriotic, and there's one thing that we agree on. Paying more taxes will never make us more patriotic.
That's true.
That is very
Matter
true.
of fact, that's
Ow! You know who actually said that? So what is the judge, famous judge?
Learned
Hand.
Learned
Look
Hand.
at you.
Hey now.
Come
Learned
on
Hand.
now.
He said, overpaying your taxes does not make you more patriotic.
That's right. Now we're going to give to Caesar, but behind the clipboards today, I've got our coaches, Randy Yeomans.
Hey, Aaron.
How you doing, Randy? Nick, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great.
Listen, I know you're going to be on that smoker this week. I'm sure you've probably got a stick picked out. You'll be poolside. I know it.
Yeah, I can't wait. I love this time of year. One, it's not lost on me. It's easy to celebrate, with fireworks and great food that's smoking on the big green egg, and like that is all awesome. But it's not lost on me. As many challenges as our country has today, we still live in one of the most free, amazing countries in the world, and it wasn't free. There was a cost for that.
Yeah.
And I'm just so thankful for our freedom.
That's a good point,
That's
Nick.
so
I when I think about it, sometimes I'm reminded of all the patriots that served in World War II and Vietnam and that. But we got a lot of men and women right now serving around the world.
Absolutely.
Who are sacrificing quite a bit, and I think it's really important for us to understand what this country stands for, the freedoms that we enjoy, and everything seems to be a holiday, but in reality, it did come with sacrifice, and that sacrifice is still being paid today.
Yeah. My chiropractor, Dr. Fred Roberto, and West Cobb Chiropractic.
Oh, pulling him a plug, nice. I like
him
that.
a plug. Yeah. I love in his office, he does something every Friday. Friday is deemed Red Day. Okay. And you wear red on Fridays and red stands for Remember Everyone Deployed.
Wow.
And if you wear red when you go into his office on Fridays, you're entered into a raffle on that. But really, it makes you mindful that there are men and women deployed and actively serving today. We might not be at war right now, but the reality is we've got some amazing people serving our country.
Yeah, and you know what? We might need to do that, except for we got a lot of bulldogs that would swear that it was.
That's right.
And we'd have a couple of them
Go
leave,
dogs.
right?
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true.
Anyway. All
So
right.
in an effort to celebrate freedoms,
Yeah.
Nick, what would be one of your favorite kind of frees?
Oh, that would be, Aaron, tax-free.
Tax-free. I'm sure nobody's ever heard that.
Tax freedom. Can we do tax freedom?
Tax freedom. Listen, today, what we want to talk about in a great way to explore tax freedom would be the benefits of a health savings account. Now, listen, this is a tool that can significantly impact your healthcare planning. And to kind of dive into that immediately, kick things off, Nick, you want to explain this tool and why we would tie this in with this topic?
It's a triple threat.
It is
the triple threat. I mean, it really is.
We're the original triple threat, but then the HSA.
God help us all.
We're for anybody who's trying to dress appropriately with a triple threat.
So the incredible thing, I mean, really, from a financial tool standpoint, you save money on taxes when you put it in.
Right.
It grows with no taxes, tax deferred, and if used for medical expenses, comes out tax free.
Eligible.
It is, eligible. It is the triple tax free threat. That's hard to say, by the way. If you're to say that three times
you
fast.
never know it.
But the reality is it's an awesome, awesome tool. And people, I think, largely miss out on the opportunity that exists with this tool.
Yeah.
And, it used to be hard to come by. People didn't, there was not a lot of education around it today. I mean, you can get on almighty Google and get information about it today, but many times employer plans are offering it, even Obamacare options that offer it today. So it is so much more available. But I think, Randy, that one of the big things is that the reason people don't use it is they don't understand it.
Right. I think not only do they not understand it, they don't know how to use it most effectively, because like other tools, it's you don't just have it to have it. How do you use it? And I would say probably a great majority of people are not using it the way maybe they could. And so depending on somebody's income and how much they've got to set aside, there's a lot of deductions or deferrals within somebody's paycheck today. So you have to manage that whole element of it really well. But you don't find triple tax advantages anywhere else that I'm aware of.
Yeah. Well, and Randy, here's another thing that I would just have people think about. I think part of the reason people are hesitant to use this today is because they remember the way it used to be structured. You don't use it, you lose it, much like the way the FSA is today, the flexible spending account. Yep. So if you don't use it, you kind of lose that benefit.
And that's how people are using it, like they have to do it, when a lot of clients, especially those that have great incomes and have enough means to handle their own medical expenses, maybe they should fund it but not use it. And that sounds strange, but go into that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I'm going to reframe this, Aaron.
Yeah.
Okay. We have retirement accounts that we'll pay future taxes on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Traditional IRAs, rollover IRAs, things like that. We have Roth IRAs, never pay tax again once the money's in there, right? Tax deferred, comes out tax free.
If you do it right.
If you do it right, right. So we've got these retirement accounts focused, they're bent towards retirement income, right? We retire, and that's where we're going to draw our income. So maybe we have a pension, we have Social Security, retirement income. I'm going to frame the HSA as it's the medical retirement account.
Absolutely. When someone says, I don't think that's for me, I'm in great health, I rarely go to the doctor, they're missing the point.
Yes. And the thing is, with the HSA, and while there are limitations to it, we'll get into a few of those, contribution limits, etc. The reality is, once you hit certain dollar amounts in an HSA, Randy, like you can invest it.
Right.
That money can grow tax deferred.
Absolutely.
People kind of forget that you can actually do that.
Yeah.
And the reality is there are two big enemies in retirement: taxes and healthcare costs.
Yeah.
If we can take care of the taxes with something like a Roth, then the other part to that is we could take care of your medical expenses with a HSA.
Yeah. Right.
This is a medical retirement account.
Yeah.
I think the Roth, the 529, and the HSA are very misunderstood, and people would use them a lot more if they understood them. And I know we're going to get into some of the limits and all of that, but one thing I noticed about most HSA accounts too is if you are going to invest the money, if you're going to build it up for future use, which I'll let you go into the details of that, you should dig in there and see what your investment options are, because some of them are really expensive, like the investment options that are prepackaged by the custodian. They can be a lot more expensive than if you buy more of the index-oriented or the low-cost versions that are often there, and you do that mix yourself. And that might be something where you have your financial professional look at that with you, help them. let them help you pick the allocation mix. So if you're going to do where you're going, which is let the money grow, build up during the years that you're eligible to contribute to it. See, when I was 65, I had to stop, so what I've got in there, that's all I can get in there. So letting that money grow and having it invested according to when I plan on using it, which is a long, long ways out. Hey.
Yeah, long. Yeah.
Who knows?
Thursday next week.
Not nice people. Anyway, so we let that grow. Then the asset allocation or the investment part that Nick mentioned should reflect when you're going to use that money. So don't just leave it sitting around necessarily in, the savings element. If you've got a window, and most of them have a window into the investment option, look at what those options are and tie that investment allocation to when you're going to use the money, and look at the cost, because that erodes return.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and we would call that fee drag, right? I mean, like it's dragging down the return on your money. And to your point, Randy, not all, Roths are going to be built the same, right? And they're not all going to perform the same. And, these things are and can be built different. You do have an element of good, better, and best. And so we understand they're not all created equal, just like an annuity, just like life insurance, right? So many of these tools, index funds even, I mean, like they all could be used well, and they could provide a benefit. But if you're anything like me and you want the best for your family, then to Randy's point, explore what your options are.
Yeah.
Because you do have options. And Randy, do you know the reason I think most people don't?
Tell me, Nick.
They didn't know they could.
Didn't know they could. That's
They
probably.
didn't know they could.
All right. And you and I have gone fishing on the 4th of July before. And speaking of 4th of July fishing, you've got to see people on the hook talk about eligibility.
Oh, my gosh.
You see what I did there?
so, oh my gosh. All right. This episode is brought to you by cheese. So we need Kraft to sponsor us. But
That's right.
anyway.
I don't think you can say that.
I know.
All right. So anyway, so who's eligible? So number one, you have to be enrolled in a high deductible health plan. So as an example, like I have a health insurance plan at work, right? We provide health insurance, but you had two different options.
Right.
And one of the options had a higher deductible with an HSA option. The other one, lower deductible, but no HSA. So I elected to use the HSA option. So you do have to have one of those high deductible plans to qualify. And it's the same thing. If you go to the healthcare exchange today, you could have very, very similar plans in terms of benefits, but the deductibles might be changed because one of them provides that HSA component.
It's a good point. Like you've got to look at the whole package of what it is that you're trying to do, and whether or not you want to take advantage of something like an HSA, and measure what's the best option for you. Like if you're very healthy and you've got good cash flow, taking the higher deductible is not a big deal. And the fact that you could put money away before tax, grow it tax deferred, and then later take it out for eligible expenses, tax free, that's great. I was thinking about the asset allocation part of it, which normally never gets talked about. But if you look at somebody who's just had a child or grandchild and they set up a 529 plan, it's a long time before that money is going to be able to be used. So you're probably going to have a more aggressive asset allocation strategy, more equities, et cetera. And that would be similar to how you might look at the underlying investment options with the HSA. When do you really plan on using it? And let's talk about that for a minute. Like, what's the most expensive medical time to use an HSA, or when you're using your medical, what's that age in which it's extremely expensive? People are spending money. Maybe they never spent money on medical, but once you get up there in the years, you're spending all of your money that you spend on medical in the last several years of your life.
And that's because, Randy, I mean, really, you already have stuff at that point in time of your life, right? Like you've got the house, you've got cars, you've got gadgets and gadgets, and maybe you're trying to get rid of your gadgets and gadgets.
I'd like
trying
somebody
to
to
get
take some of my
rid
gadgets.
So it's not about stuff anymore, right? And the reality is I could look at somebody who is between 65 and 85 today, and I think the majority of people are going to fall in these, three different spending categories. You're going to have, health, you're going to have travel, and you're going to have family.
Yeah, you missed two.
What's that?
They have to redo the kitchen and the master bath.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You're speaking
it's
from
the law.
experience right now.
It's just
I
the
think.
law. You have to do it.
I thought we were going to hear about those grandkids again.
Hey, let's get into some of the rules. Let's get into the contribution rules, et cetera.
Yeah, well, and before we get to contribution limits, just, because people sometimes think that there are certain limits around how to use the money, that, if someone is just not interested in hearing any more, and they're going to turn this thing off because they think it's very limited, you can only use it towards certain medical expenses, like their primary care physician, or they need a physical or something like that, right? But the reality is, dental,
Right.
vision. These, while there are some boundaries, these are extremely flexible today. You can use these things for all kinds of health-related expenses, and it's not near as limited as to what people think they are.
Right.
And I'll use an example. I had a client who just had a $19,000 dental expense, and he's 76 or 77 years old. $19,000. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But the
Hold on,
reality
Nick.
is,
it's not crazy. We've got some clients who are dentists. It's a great investment.
but the point is, that stuff happens, and it can get very expensive very quickly.
As a matter of fact, that's a great point, Nick. I mean, some of these things that people are going to want to have happen, you've got to, there is this tendency to need some tune-ups later in life. So, that's a good one.
No, that is great.
Dental expenses, I think, are the ones that sometimes floor people as they get older, because they often say, "You're not going to believe how much this cost." And I said, "Actually, I could probably guess." We've seen it a few times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like redoing the kitchen.
It is exactly like redoing the kitchen. You're not going to shock us at this point. But to Randy's point, so if let's say they run in the opposite direction and they do get excited, it's like anything else, the Roth included contribution limits.
Yeah. So for 2024, if you are an individual, your contribution limit is $3,750. So, yes, I get it. This is not huge money. But the reality is, over time, it can add up, especially if you're investing. It's almost like dollar cost averaging, into IRA, 401k, et cetera, for retirement. This is your medical retirement account, okay? And for a family, so if you have a family plan and you qualify, that limit today for 2024 is $7,500. So if you're an individual, $3,750, and if you have a family plan and you qualify, $7,500.
Nick, I was thinking about this, and not only the eligibility, but how people, spend their money. Like, where do you go? What's the first thing? Fund the 401k, do the HSA, do 529, what that option. And I think, for those of you who are in pretty good financial shape and in a reasonable, strong part of your career, this is something that you've really got to consider doing, because ultimately you're going to be spending money in this area, and you might as well get the most advantage of it while you're working. And, you've got, the tax advantages today, tax deferred growth, and especially if you've got the ability to pay a lot of your expenses right now, your deductibles and all that out of pocket, and grow this money and get that compounding effect, so that when the expenses are really high, like you were talking about with some dentistry that we see, you've got funds that you could pull from instead of the IRA or instead of a brokerage account, and you've got to pay taxes on those, but come out of another account that was specifically targeted for a known expense. So you've got to do that if you're eligible and that plan exists.
Well, and Randy, can I talk about one more reason why people sometimes don't do this? Is the fear that if you have in your name an HSA, and let's say you've built up $60,000 in it, $65,000 in it, okay, which is a fair amount, not huge, fair, but you passed away and didn't use it.
Yeah.
For some people, Aaron, the concern is it just goes away. The company keeps those funds.
They confuse it with other plans, right?
That's right. But the reality is, like, I helped 2 times in the last year, people actually transfer those funds to their spouse.
Yeah.
So just because you might not use it, your spouse still might use it, right?
Yeah. No, that's so great. So let me give you some key takeaways for this. Hopefully we have at least piqued your interest if this is not something that's been a point of consideration for you and your family. Number one, triple tax advantaged. I mean, how many of those opportunities are we going to get and be able to take advantage of? We want you to make sure that you understand the tax benefits from a contribution standpoint, from an earnings standpoint, and a withdrawal standpoint. But again, triple tax advantaged. Eligibility requirements. Make sure that you know the criteria for opening and contributing to an HSA, right? The flexible use. Explore the wide range of medical expenses and maybe what feels expensive, but is very reasonable dentistry products and services.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Dental vacation, Costa Rica. That's what
where
I'm
we're
saying.
going. Also, contribution limits. Be aware of the annual limits for individuals and families. And fifth, lastly, most importantly, is that investment potential. We want you to consider investing your HSA funds for potential growth to cover future needs. Like Randy said, do it smart. Do it at a low cost and with the end in mind. You want to make sure that you invest in a time frame that is appropriate for when you expect to be in that window of actually using these assets.
So let me just make sure, because we covered a lot of really positive stuff. Make sure that you talk to some professionals about this that understand it. You know, whether that is HR, your CPA, your investment advisor, whatever it might be. Get some collaboration on this. Make sure that it fits in line, and recognize that a lot of professionals aren't all that familiar with it either. So, but do get counsel on this. We're pulling out the highlights on this. A lot of times, we're talking about things, all the negatives that you got to, warnings, be careful, but this is all positive, but it still requires, good stewardship, good investigation.
Yeah. Well, and Randy, I'll tie something in. You were talking about a few minutes ago. Where do you start? Do you start by funding the 401k? Do you start by funding the IRA? Do you buy the life insurance? At what point in time do you really look to use this tool? And my encouragement to listeners in the audience today would be, start when you can start. I mean, don't get caught up into, well, can I contribute to the limit? Can I, afford this amount or that amount?
Right.
Don't get too caught up
Great
on
point.
that part.
Yeah.
Get more caught up and focused on starting.
100%.
You can always increase in the future. But what you can't buy back is time. Don't wait until you're 64 and you've got a year to do this. Don't wait until you're 60. And it's not that you shouldn't start at that time or do something, but the reality is if you're in your 30s today or 40s and your income continues to increase, find a pathway for those dollars.
Right.
To fund something that will very likely be that medical retirement account. But Randy, unlike other retirement accounts, the thing is, and I know we're calling it that, and it's not really a retirement account, sometimes life happens. Mm-hmm. Emergencies happen. You're 42 years old.
Thank you.
Boom, something happens. 50 years old, something happens. You don't have to wait till you're 59 and a half to access this for those medical costs.
Good point.
So anyway, my encouragement today, start.
If you have an HSA success story, or you've got further questions that you would like to share with our coaches, we'd love for you to email us at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. And again, we're being serious. We hope that you have a celebrated, wonderful time this week. We encourage you to reflect. We have a lot of freedoms, not just the tax freedoms that we mentioned today, but a lot of freedoms that we should really be grateful for. Yep. Thanks for joining us, and appreciate you guys. And thank you for being coachable.
We hope you enjoyed today's show, but you may have questions for our coaches, and they can be emailed at connect@yourretirementcoach.com. If you know someone that needs to hear this episode, we encourage you to share it. As a reminder, the content of this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and should not be construed as advice. On behalf of our coaches, we want to thank you for listening and for being coachable.
Yeoman's Consulting Group, a registered investment advisor YouTube channel based in Marietta, Georgia. We strive to provide comprehensive wealth management services for every stage of the journey. This platform is solely for informational purposes and is not offering advisory services or sales of securities. Investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Comments by viewers or recognitions are no guarantee of future investment outcomes and do not ensure that a viewer will experience a higher level of performance or results. Public comments posted on this site are not selected, amended, deleted, or sorted in any way. If applicable, certain editing of personal, identifiable information and misinformation may be deleted. The opinions expressed herein are as of the date of publication and are subject to revision due to changes in the market or economic conditions and may not necessarily come to pass.